Good afternoon. Thank you very much to the TEDx organizers for inviting me to be part of this wonderful occasion with this amazing group of people. You never know when you're the last speaker if it's a compliment or a punishment for some crime, but we're here, so let's make the most of it. So let me start off by giving you a date. January 25th, 2058. According to deathclock.org, that's the day that I'm going to die. So the internet is a wonderful thing. You can go and find all kinds of great information, including your death date. So the average Canadian is going to live roughly 82 years. That is 29,930 days. So for me, I have 14,559 days left. And by the way, my birthday is January the 14th. So January the 14th, 2058, I'm going to have one hell of a party. You're all invited. I have 11 days to go. We are going to light it up. So you have roughly 30,000 days on this planet. And the question is, as you get close to those 30,000 days, I want you to imagine now that you are a few days before your specific end date. And I want you to ask yourself, how do I know that I lived a good life? How do I know that my time on earth mattered? Because at the end of the day, we have this one life to live. And so far, when we talk about what is a good life, well, a good life is a life that's filled with achievement. A good life is getting better education, is getting a better job. It's getting better things that show we've made it. And this good life, unfortunately, is all about the I. How did I succeed? And so when we look at the good life, the way that we define it now, we look at the consequences of this I mindset. And what are those consequences? The consequences are that we have a world of haves and have-nots. We have a world of extreme and opulent wealth on one side, and right next to it, extreme poverty. We have a world where a vast majority of people feel ignored and feel like their lives don't matter. So you say to yourself, wait a minute though, we're not all that bad. We donate, we give our money and we give our time to other people. And yes, we do that. But let's have a look at that. So there is something called the World Giving Index that is run by the Gallup organization. It's a very large polling organization. They do something called the World Poll. And part of that, they come up with the World Giving Index. So when you see where is Canada in that, there's 139 countries, by the way, that they survey. So Canada is actually not so bad. We're number 7, right? So you look at Canada, and you're like, we're number 7 there, and they've got these different dimensions. You know, we help strangers, 60% of us roughly. We donate money, again, another 60%, although the average Canadian gives $123 a year, that's 34 cents a day. And 35% of us give our time. Now, what's interesting, when you look at this index, is the number 1 country. And the number 1 country, which actually has been the number 1 country for 4 years in a row, is Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. And for those of you that don't know a lot about Myanmar, it's got a per capita income of $702, and 38% live at or below the poverty line. And by the way, the poverty line in Myanmar is 88 cents US a day. So when we're talking about a poor country, this is one of the poorest countries in the world. And yet, it has been, for the last 4 years, one of the most giving countries in the world. And we say to ourselves, what does that have to do with? Well, 99% of the people of Myanmar are Buddhists. And those of you that know about Buddhism, Buddhism places a lot of emphasis on kindness and giving. And Buddhism has this concept of karma, which is that for every action there's a reaction. And that you have to be intentional about what you do because it has consequences. And I'm not suggesting here that we all become Buddhists, but we're all on different paths in terms of spirituality with beliefs and non-beliefs in higher beings, but we're all on that same path called humanity. And if we look at humanity and what it means to be a human being, it's about commonality and about connecting. In my life, I've been very fortunate to have traveled extensively. I'm at around 70, give or take a country or two. And what I notice is, as I travel around the world, there's so much of us that's in common. We all laugh, we all find joy, we all cry when there's something that's deeply grieving. And we all want to have this feeling of connection with something. What if we started to reimagine and redefine the world and the living of a good life in it from that I mentality to the us mentality? What if we started to say and reimagine what it means to be successful? It's not just about going to the top yourself, but actually to help others get there with you. So I was once, like you, a bit younger than I am right now, and I did my undergraduate in business, and I went and started working for a big company, and then I went and did my MBA, and started, working for another big company. And then I was like, that's not enough. I'm going to go do my PhD. And so I went, I did my PhD, and I started working at elite universities around the world and consulting to top multinationals. And with that, I started to accumulate all those things that show that you're successful, fancy house and fancy cars and fancy gadgets. But what I noticed was that in that pattern of accumulating things and successes, I wasn't really happy. And so I mentioned this to a colleague once. I said, I've got everything, and I'm not really that happy. And he said to me, success is getting what you want, and happiness is wanting what you get. And I saw that the more I got, the less happy I became. And as I started to reflect on this, I want to share a story with you. It was in one of my travels in Brazil. I'd gone to Rio de Janeiro, and Rio de Janeiro is famous for its beaches and its wonderful scenery, and of course also for its poverty. And one day as I was coming out of my hotel room, there was a little kid that was running up to the tourists and tugging at their legs. But there was a doorman at the hotel who just kept chasing this kid around and basically shooing him away. But he didn't give up. He just kept coming back. And so when I kind of got closer, he ran up to me, and the doorman again jumped in there to try and tell him to shoot him. And I said, no, it's okay. It's okay. He had this little spark, and it made me want to connect with him. And so he looked up to me and very excitedly in Portuguese, and I couldn't understand anything he was saying. So he just took my hand, and he took me to this table. And this table was a checkers table, and those are bottle caps. Those are water bottle caps. And he started to teach me how to play checkers with him. And we sat there, and we played checkers for a couple of hours. And at each time, he would win a game, and then I would win a game. And he was so full of joy. He was so full of love for what he was doing. In fact, at one point, I was getting a bit hungry, and I said, let's go get something to eat. And he said, no, And so there was somebody who was just selling chips. We just got the chips, and then we just continued playing. And from that couple of hours that I spent with him, I felt this sense of happiness that I hadn't felt in such a long time, just because of his passion and his energy that was coming over to me, and his desire to connect. And after I left and he just gave me this high five, I was so impressed with his intelligence and determination and joy. And I said, this little boy deserves more than to just live on the streets. And I, with all my education and experience and background, can actually take some action to do something for people like this little boy. And so the more I traveled and the more I got in contact, and I started to seek this out, going to developing countries and not going there just to lie on the beach anymore, but going into the rural areas and going into the slums, the more determined I became that in my time here, I'm going to start to do something about it. So with that started my not-for-profit, Humanos. And our mission is to marry the mind of business with the heart of humanity to transform the lives of the disadvantaged. And the way that we do that is by using this approach called design thinking. Design thinking is an innovative approach that centers on the human being. And why is it so powerful? Well, first of all, it begins with the person. And here I'm going to show you our first project in Nicaragua, where we went to try to help the problem of financial inclusion. So once you begin with the person, you can start to hear their stories. We're in this world of big data and billions of bits of information, but at the end of the day, those billions of bits of information don't mean anything until we see the world through the eyes of someone else, until we develop this thing called empathy. And empathy is just having to walk in someone else's shoes and see what they're seeing. It's very different from sympathy. But once you have the empathy, you can actually start to feel that you want to do something, that you want to make a difference in someone's lives. And from there, once you have that empathy, once you've understood the person's pain points, you can start to listen more deeply and co-create with them. And here we have a lady who's 80 years old, and we are having this discussion with her to tell her about an idea that we had for an animal loan program. And what we said to her is, hey, what do you think? We'll give you a loan, and you go and buy a pig and raise this pig and then sell this pig, and the profit, can increase your livelihood. And here she's telling us that, no, pigs won't work. And we were like, well, why not? Well, pigs, they're too big. They are too dirty. They eat too much. In fact, they can actually run through our homes. If you notice the picture of the home there, it was just a bit of mud and sticks, and a pig at full speed can go right through that. And hey, if they catch a disease, that's it, right? There goes your livelihood. So we're like, okay, we didn't really think about that. So she said, I think you guys should go with chickens. Everybody has experience with chickens. They're a lot smaller, they're cleaner. We can put them into our homes so that we can protect them from the elements and predators. And if, a couple of them die, that's okay because there's others there. And so we took that back, and using her input and her set of assumptions, we redid our thinking around it. And what we actually came up with was exactly what she had said, that in fact chickens are a much, much better deal than pigs. And so we created this program, and we saw that you could take a family of 5 sustainably out of poverty in less than 2 years with the Chicken Microenterprise Program. And what was interesting was at the time that we were putting the finishing touches around this program, there was this summit of the top 400 philanthropists in New York where Bill Gates said, if I was living on $2 a day, I'd become a chicken farmer. And we were tweeting out, we're glad that Bill Gates agrees with us and this 80-year-old grandmother in El Naranjo, Nicaragua. So design thinking for humanity is bringing this approach of deep understanding, of deep listening, of deep co-creation, and not to tell people what to do. It's to show them something that perhaps they hadn't seen before, and then to give them, to empower them, to take control of their own destinies, and to pave that path for prosperity for themselves and their community members for generations to come. And this program that's been piloted for a couple of years is going very well, and we're looking at how can we expand that to another 30 communities and really allow people to feel what it's like to be in charge of their own lives and their own livelihoods. So when you think to yourselves, well, you know, how do I be the change that matters? Well, the first thing is you got to believe in that. You are the generation that can change everything. You just have to have that spirit, that imagination that dares to dream dreams that nobody else believes in, and to chase rainbows that nobody else sees. It takes courage and faith that things are going to work out in the end. Because if it hasn't worked out, it's not the end. And it takes you redefining what it means to live a successful life. It means when you look back on your life and you say, I lived a good life, I lived a successful life, you can say that I did that because I looked beyond my own needs, beyond my own wants, and I took action with passion and with purpose to improve the lives of others. Thank you very much.
Niels, Bilou.